The Northwest, the ANC's problem child, still doesn't have a premier candidate. We tried to make sense of the internal wrangling. And then KZN, the province is facing tragedy after tragedy, from deadly floods to fatal political wars, and now the biggest corruption case to land on the court roll of the Durban Commercial Crimes Court. Should eThekwini Mayor Zandile Kumete go? We ask the ANC in KZN. Welcome to Politbureau with me, Aldrin Simpier. So as we've mentioned in that intro, it's been a week now since the ANC announced its premier candidates where the party won. The problem child, the Northwest, still has a vacancy. With the low female representation of the premier candidates, the Northwest may just have to bite the bullet and help the ANC save face. But this approach too is seen as divisive. Now, joining me in studio to discuss this is Xolani Dube, political analyst. But before Xolani Dube gets to comment on what's happening in the Northwest, let's take a listen to the SACP's Madoda Sambata, what he had to say about the current political impasse in that province.
For the SACP, not only for the SACP, for the people of the province, stability and refocusing of the provincial government is key. And Professor Job Mokgoro was deployed by the National Executive Committee of the ANC, which that decision was never contested as an intervention premier. The provincial government...
Does that surprise you at all that the SACP would take that stance, that Job Mokgoro must remain there?
Remember that initially it was the SACP that was at the forefront to say Supra Mahumapilo, he's supposed to vacate his office because he's very divisive in that particular province. And we're the ones also who were advocating for a new premier. I think what is happening currently is that the advantage and it serves the interest of the SACP. But the fact of the matter is, the whole issue of premiership in our country in relation to ANC, I think there is so much question that one needs to answer, and it gives kind of doubt if this, what we call its unity and Ramaphoria is really a new dawn. But it seems as if it's another continuation of factions.
Why do you think it has been impossible or so impossible in the Northwest, where, for instance, you've had Mpumalanga, at least now you have the premier candidate there being Refilwe, but Mpumalanga, like the Northwest, face a bit of instability. Mpumalanga doesn't have a permanent top five since the election of Didi Mabuza, whereas in the Northwest, which didn't have a premier since last year, but yet they seem to be having more troubles compared to Mpumalanga.
Look, you have to understand that the issue of Mpumalanga, it also boils down to the eyes of the ANC when it comes to the justice and fairness throughout the whole provinces and how the laws of the ANC are supposed to be applied. In Mpumalanga is not different from the what we call it Northwest, because the current premier that has been appointed, it goes against all the constitution of the ANC.
How so?
Remember that in that particular province, Didi Mabuza, he moved to become the deputy president of the country. And so according to the constitution, there was supposed to be a kind of election post his departure, but we have not seen it. But it seems as if the province in the eyes of South Africa is stable. But what we know is not stable at all.
But how is it that Mpumalanga has been able to manage, well, what we see from the outside as a facade of unity as compared to the Northwest? How is it that Mpumalanga can reach some sort of consensus that says, okay, Refilwe would be the premier candidate, whereas in the Northwest they are struggling?
There are no consensus, because if you remember that there was a court case that was going on, and then it was dismissed on the terms of its agency. Yeah. And so the rumblings are there. You guys, I mean, I can only attribute it to Didi Mabuza being in the top official of the ANC, that he can be the fire extinguisher for the Mpumalanga party, and also it serves Didi Mabuza to have the woman there in Mpumalanga, because he is the one who installed that woman, if you remember. And so I think he is the bargaining of him in the top 6.
So do you think, had Supra still been in place as the chairperson of the province, and the structure, the provincial structure of the province had not been disbanded, we may have seen a different outcome?
Definitely. Look, even in KwaZulu-Natal, if you look at the requirements or the rules and regulation to appoint the premier, there was also, is the only province that has not been under the leadership of a woman post-apartheid, of which I think it begs a lot of question in terms of the application of rules and also to empower women. And now we see Sihle Zikalala instead of Nomsa or any other person or female in that province. And so I think this premiership appointment is about political expediency rather than to fulfill the real policies and the requirements of the ANC.
The argument has been that the reason why the ANC is failing to push through the female candidates is because there is the premiership is not seen as a structure of the ANC. But as far as I understand, that the ANC has always said that we want to push for gender parity, meaning in even those positions where women are, even in those positions which are not per se positions that people are elected to, but rather appointed to, and one of those positions becoming the premier candidate, for instance. And that seems to be failing.
Look, you have to understand that patriarchal entrenchment in the ANC, also coupled with political expediency, is still entrenched, and I don't think that is something that sooner is going to be overcome. And because if you remember, it's such a very contradictional thing that it was the ANC of KwaZulu-Natal that went all out, mentioning that it's time for a woman now to be at the helm of the ANC. But when it comes to the province of KwaZulu-Natal, they backtracked, and then they said, no, this is not supposed to happen in our province. It's the same thing with the issue of land. It was KwaZulu-Natal ANC that was saying nationalize land or expropriate land without compensation. But when it comes to the issue of Ngonyama Trust, and then they backtrack. And so that's why I'm saying the ANC speak with forked tongues. They do it in order to push a particular political agenda, but when it comes to reality, and then they backtrack. And so it's a simple thing. They speak left and then they walk right.
Do you think the other problem with the Northwest, for instance, is what the province should be focusing on is the unity of the party, instead of trying to push through this argument around gender parity?
Look, the unity of the country, I think, is what Cyril Ramaphosa is failing to do, because that is not a responsibility of one province. Unity is supposed to start from the top and cascade to provinces. And so I think Cyril Ramaphosa is failing the ANC, and his leadership is so weak in the ANC to an extent that I think that the ANC, the state that it is in currently, is going to take ANC to a serious unforeseen
Someone
direction.
else may argue that, considering that in the Northwest, for instance, that you have Supra Mamapilo, who's gone as the premier, and then you have the disbanding of the provincial structure, that certainly means that Cyril Ramaphosa does wield some power within the ANC. The argument that some people are making is that, well, he may lead a party that has now decided to disband a provincial structure, to recall a premier, for instance, but there is no foresight in terms of what the fallout could be post a decision that may have been taken, a decision like this, like the removal of Supra Mamapilo, the disbandment of a provincial structure, that the party now finds itself with this quagmire that it sits with now.
Look, as I've said, I think the problem is with the ANC leadership, and we have to point it to the presidency, that to a certain extent we have to accept that the man can't fill the shoes of an ANC president, because he is not an organic leader within the ANC. We have to accept that.
I'm sure Fikile Mbalula would disagree with you.
Fikile Mbalula, he said anything that suits him so that he can see himself ascending to any political position. And so I don't think we have to take him serious in this case, because we're dealing with the principal issues here. To say Cyril Ramaphosa, to a certain extent, as I've said, he might end up being the problem of the ANC if he's not going to be the president and really act decisively on the issues of the ANC. If I can give you another example, he went to KwaZulu-Natal. In KwaZulu-Natal, he was seen during the election moving around with a municipality manager who was out on bail. And that also sent a very bad message to Pegicele as well as to us citizens to say, how dare the president of the country can be seen moving around with a mayor who's out on bail. And then that pushed him into a corner that today he can't make a decision around Zandile Gumede. And so that's why I'm saying he's flip-flopping. He is going to find himself in a corner where he can't be able to take principled decisions.
Well, let's continue this discussion. After the break, we'll be having a focus on KwaZulu-Natal. Of course, we have Zandile Gumede, who was arrested, appeared in court, and she's out on bail of 50,000 rand. But what's very important about this issue is the timing of the arrest, I believe, which is very important, an issue that has been raised continuously, even during the NDPP interviews, where those prosecutors said that when it comes to the prosecution or even serving an indictment on an alleged criminal or a suspect, the timing is very, very important. We'll have that discussion after this quick break.